Alright guys, welcome back to another tying video with Old Florida. My name is Mike. Today we're going to be tying the baby, not your average popper. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do before we even start is cut our popper body head. So these are the measurements I have for the popper body, but I just did this for the sake of the video. For me personally, I will keep this and put this away, but I do keep a blank or a pre-shaped and sized popper body for the hook. So I have a drawer full of these guys, all different kinds of styles and shapes for different hooks and different flies that I've tied in the past. But all I do with this guy is I usually, or I try to, reference a corner edge. If I have that foam, I will match it up to a corner edge. I'll take a fine tip Sharpie or marker or anything to mark this with, and I'll come in here and I'll mark that little bottom piece, and that's our new popper body. One of the biggest things with cutting this foam, I take a real heavy duty stiff razor and I try to use a new one as much as I possibly can. But when you're cutting this, you don't want to cut it on an angle. You want to make sure this is 90 degrees to your cutting surface. So put it right on that line and push straight down. When you make that cut, make sure it goes all the way through. Same thing, I'm going to take this, make that cut, go straight down all the way through in one cut. So right there, you can see you get a nice even block cut rather than having it come super angled off the top like that. It's just a very nice popper head. So the next step is to actually take this razor. I'm going to make a mark right in the middle of this, make sure I'm on the middle of both. And I'm just going to wiggle that razor back and forth, being extremely careful not to slice my hand open. But I'm just going to rotate it and cut about halfway up in the middle of the back and making sure it's completely level right there. You want it to be level with that. I don't want the razor looking like that. I want to make sure that that fly is riding nice and even on the top of the hook. So we're just going to take our razor blade, stick it right there, create a nice little fold. And I'm actually going to take my razor and I'm going to hold it on a little angle just by the tip of the razor. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to score that inside. So I made one little V cut right there, if you could see that. I'm going to spin it around. I'm going to do the same exact thing. Make another V cut, taking that material out. Ideally, you want to do this in 2 passes, but if you have to do 3, 4, 5 passes to clean it up, so be it. All I'm doing is removing a little bit of that foam on the inside to give myself a little concaved kind of ridge or point for that hook to sit in. So I'm just going to keep making sure I got a nice little ridge right here. Perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for right there. I'm going to take out a little bit more material. Just going to kind of razor blade it out of there. So for the back, if you look at the back of that, I want to actually take a little bit of that material out of the back. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to kind of make a little oval shape in my hand. I'm going to kind of cut that material out the back. So just coming from both sides, we're just going to scoop out a little bit of that material, giving ourselves maybe 3/4 the way down the back, down the top of the head. So what I mean by that is if you see that back right there, we're just kind of cutting some of that out. It's about a little more than halfway from the top of that popper body to the base of that opening right there. And this popper head is ready to go. So let's get on to the vise. Just take our hook, secure that in the vise. We're going to take our thread and we're going to start it right behind the eye of the hook. We're going to really tie down a very nice tight thread base all the way till you get to the hook point. I want to lay down a very nice, making sure to make it super tight all the way to the hook point, and then we could go ahead and trim that tag end off. So after we have that, we are going to take our bucktail Take a nice good piece of bucktail. Pretty healthy sized clump. This is going to do two things. This is going to prop the tail up so the fly does not foul. So I'm going to take those underfurs, I'm going to pop those underfurs out. And I'm going to probably measure about from the bend to the top of the shank, 2 full shanks of that hook. I'm going to trim my butts off. I'm going to tie that right on the very top side of the shank of the hook. Once we have that secured, I'm going to wrap underneath that bucktail, doing a parachute wrap twice. So you capture all that material around, and then put my wraps there. So you could see that material props upward. That's going to prevent the fly from fouling. It's going to keep that nice and on top and high. You'll see as we tie more. Next we have our fish scale. I'm going to take a pretty healthy clump and double it over. Once I have that doubled over, I can cut it in half. And the rest of this fly is pretty much a high tie pattern as far as the material goes. So I have my fish scale. I didn't stagger the end, I left it nice and long because we're just going to trim it right after. I'm going to take this material, I'm going to cut it on a slight little angle. That way it gives us a little bit cleaner of a tie-in point. I'm going to lay it right on the top side of the shank of the hook, right in front of where I tied off that bucktail. So right where that ramp is, where we made that cut, we're going to put that right on top of the bucktail and then secure it down and pull everything to the top side of the shank of the hook. Then we can secure it down. See how it leaves like a nice little ramp right here with that fish scale being right on top of the bucktail. Next step is we're going to take our secondary top color and we are going to take a long piece, fold it in half, and cut. Same exact thing. We're going to make a little ramp right here, cutting it on an angle, laying it down, and just capture wrapping that. Making sure to tie all of this on the top side of the shank of the hook. We want to make sure we have it all the way in a high tie fashion. And we're going to tie right back to that bucktail and then secure it down. It's okay if you don't have full coverage of this material. It doesn't really make a huge difference. It's going to get covered up with epoxy anyway. Now for our accent, we're going to take a couple strands of peacock. We are going to lay it right on the top side of the shank. We're going to do a capture wrap. I'm going to put like 2-3 wraps down, trim out the excess in the front, keeping that material on the top side of the shank of the hook. Just do some open wraps, move that thread forward, lock everything down right there. Cover up those wraps a little bit. Make sure we got them nice and straight. Secure everything down. Now that's actually the done tying portion of the fly, so that's going to be our done tail without trimming. So we can go ahead and whip finish this. The whip finish doesn't have to be great. We're going to epoxy over it like I said, so it's going to hold itself down pretty dang good. For sake of video, I'm going to trim this fly now, and then we'll put our head on. So I'm going to take this out of my vise. I'm going to kind of pinch that material where it's sitting in the right orientation, which straight up and laying flat. I'm going to start right behind the bucktail. I'm just going to keep opening and closing my scissors as I pull back, kind of feathering that material out. So it's going to give us a really nice looking shaped tail where that material kind of feathers backwards. Not all in one swoop, kind of stagger that material. And I made this probably around 3.5–4 inches long, the whole tail from the very base to the very end, with it being staggered. The peacock curls, I'll come in here and I'll actually just cut them individually, stagger them just a little bit, kind of give it a little more depth. So once we have that down, we are ready to move on to the gluing. So I just have a little piece of paper right here, and then 2-part epoxy, Got the Zap 5-minute epoxy. Equal parts epoxy, so same little dime size glue on both edges. I have my head here. Before I even start epoxying, I'm just going to dry fit it. And then when you do dry fit it, I want you to squeeze that little gap so it sits nice and easy on there without you holding it. It's just going to be much easier once we have the epoxy on there. It's going to want to sit nice and even just because that foam is going to have an indentation where it should be fitting. Perfect. So we got that dry fitted. I'm going to take my epoxy here. We're going to do our 2 dime sizes, equal parts. Cap that sucker off. We're going to take our bodkin and we're going to mix that epoxy up. I am doing this off camera, sorry guys. But just folding that epoxy. Even though it is 5-minute epoxy, you do only have about 1.5 to 2 minutes of working time. Once mixed up really, really well, it does kick off pretty quick. It starts getting tacky pretty quick, which is nice because you don't have to sit there and wait for it to dry. Once we have this mixed up, I mixed mine on a white piece of manila paper like I showed you guys. So mine actually comes out with a little white tinge to it. Yours, if you do it on a Post-it or something like that, it should come out more clear. This kind of picks up the pigmentation of the paper. So I'm going to coat this whole fly right here, all the thread. It's okay if you get a little in the hair in the back. I actually don't mind. Sometimes I actually put a little bit in the hair. It's just a little bit harder to work with. We're going to fill the cavity in the back of that foam head anyway, so you will get glue on that actual back section. I'm going to take my bodkin, kind of just put it in here, kind of make sure to coat the inside of this just a little bit. I don't want to fill it, but I want to make sure that this head has full coverage on the foam. Making sure all the corners are locked down. All right, once we have that, we're going to take our foam head again, holding the tail material in the right orientation, so pinching it, kind of where those fibers should be. We're going to put it on from the back first, and then slide it backwards. That way you make sure you have no trapped fibers in that back. Now this part's a little tricky. You have to hold the head and use the epoxy to fill in the cavity here. So both your hands are going to be occupied. You're holding that up while getting more glue on your bodkin. Sorry for just looking at my finger here. But we want to fill that whole cavity. Be pretty generous with this glue. That's why we cut those big V's in there. This glue actually does another thing rather than just holding everything in place. It acts as a keel for the weight of this fly, so it rides hook point up very nice. The weight of the epoxy is what makes this fly ride so well. So we're just going to make sure that's nice and level. I'll show you guys here in a sec. Once we have that epoxy in the cavity. It's very important to make sure this is straight too. So we want to really make sure that we have, look from the front, make sure it's straight. You could use your fingers pinching together. Make sure we got full coverage here. I pull that tail down, kind of sweep it around a little bit to get that epoxy to fall down in that little crease. Once you have it starting to kick off a little bit, you don't have to worry so much with your hands and holding it. You can see that head kind of just slipped down a little bit, so I'm just going to pick it back up, squeeze it together a little. It takes a second of just playing with that material, playing with the foam head, keeping it in the right spot. I'm going to show you what it looks like right there. You can see it got very good coverage, very level to the fly. And now it's just drying. So for video purposes, I'm going to give it about 2 minutes and I will be right back. Alright, this is about 2 minutes later. So now I'm actually going to go ahead and add my marker. This is a prismatic marker. I'm going to take my marker, start from the top, just color a little bit of that top right there, kind of just feathering it in if I can. I'm going to cover the top. Nice even strokes if I can. I don't want like big marker lines. Finish it off with one longer stroke so it looks nice. And we're going to blend that side in just a little bit as well. If you can add a little gradient here with the marker, great. If you can't, don't worry about it. Take your finger a little bit, kind of work your finger in. Kind of adds a little gradient just by that. Pull that tail down, color that back section in as well. Perfect. All right, once we got the olive on there, I'm going to take my orange. I'm going to take this out of the vise to do this. I'm just going to cover that front in orange. You can do this in any color. This is just my personal preference. I think it looks pretty cool. Looks like a little greenback baitfish. Try to get full coverage of that front if you can. Make it look pretty. Try to catch the fisherman, not the fish. All right, so that's the front of that fly. If you do touch the marker and you have marker on your hands, you will mark up this body pretty badly. Just a little heads up. Okay, once we have that, we're going to prep our fish scale. This is what really makes this fly come alive. So this fish scale, even though it's on a white sheet, it is transparent. I'm going to take some brush on Loctite. I'm going to open that up. You could use Zap gel for this, Zap-A-Gap. I'm going to make sure I come in here and I have full coverage on this body. I'm just going to kind of paint the whole body. If you do touch the head or the marker on this, it will bleed into the body. So you see right away, I got some little streaks of color on there. Don't forget the top side too. I got some streaks of color in there. I personally don't mind that. I leave that in there. I think it looks pretty cool. I think it adds a little bit of more dimension and more naturalism to the fly. Make it look like it's bleeding or something. So brush that on, make sure we have full coverage here. And then pretty quickly, I'm going to open up this fish scale. I don't want that to dry too much. Peel it off the sheet. With the scales facing backwards, I'm going to lay this right over the top. I'm going to push down the top and I'm going to pull both sides down at an angle, following the contour of that body. And then I'm going to press really nice all around that fly, making sure we're basically just sandwiching that material on there. Pushing down on the top, the sides, just making sure we got nice full coverage. You don't have to wait too long, so I'm going to come in here with my razor blade. What I want to do is just trim this excess, making sure to use a sharp razor. I'm just going to trim this excess, kind of following the contour of that body. And then once you have some of it off, you'll be able to peel the rest off. I'll show you in one sec, but all I'm doing is cutting really close to that body. And just using my razor blade to finesse around the edges. Flip it over, do the side closest to me. Once you have it, show you guys in one sec. Try not to cut the foam or any extra that we don't need. This is just a rough cut, that first little bit. I'm going to take this out of the vise so I can do it a little bit better. Following the contour of that body. Takes a little time, but not bad. We want to get this done right. Perfect. That first little cut is kind of a rough trim to kind of get all the excess off, and then it's easier to work with and clean up after you're done with that super rough cut in the beginning, just to take off the bulk. Clean up the head area. That's why it's really important to get that that brush on Loctite all the way to the edges so it holds down really, really nicely. Perfect. Do one more little trim. Love it. All right, and that is our body on there. If you do happen to nick a little bit of the foam, you can always just come in here and just recolor the edges just a little bit. Make it look all pretty again. The last step is going to be the eyes. You can epoxy these eyes on there. So 2-part epoxy, drop them on. It is a little bit more tedious and it takes a little bit longer. For video purposes, I'm going to do Loctite Super Gel, which it does work totally fine. And it is an option if you want to do this a little bit faster. But if you're really looking for that locked in crazy durability, I would recommend epoxying the eyes on there. These do hold, like I said, really well. So a little bit of a dot just right on the back of that eye. We're going to place it right where that color starts, pretty high up. We're just going to push that down. It's okay if you have some bleed out on these eyes. If you put a little too much glue, it's totally fine. It actually locks the fly in a little bit better anyway. So I don't care if I put a little too much extra glue on these eyes. Same thing, turn that fly over, do the opposite eye. Kind of push it down in a little pool of that Loctite gel. And that's going to be our done fly. I will do one thing in here. I will bar that back material. So take my Sharpie, my marker, flip that sucker over. Just add 3 nice little bars on that tail. Just add a little more color to the fly. Perfect. And there you have it. That is the baby, not your average popper. An extremely durable pattern. Very good for jacks. I throw it off the beach for big jacks during summertime when people are fishing for beach snook. They are very overlooked, the jacks. So you see them rushing through the surf. They're like Florida GTs, super fun. I throw this along seawalls all the way from Jupiter, all the way down south to Miami. It is just a great little fly. Give it a tie. It's super durable. Pretty easy to tie once you got all the stuff to do it. Make the blank. It's really a cool technique to use that foil. Gives it a really good profile, really good look. So give it a tie, try it, throw it. Fish is great. Appreciate you watching this video, and as always, we hope to see you guys out on the water.